Like, first of all, I'm not in favor of giving kids as young as 11 puberty blockers. I think if they want to transition, there's a later age that would be more successful.
Well, why not?
Because they're altering their hormonal system, and if they decide to go in the other direction, it creates a lot of problems.
Wait, how? I mean, maybe America's amazing. Americans are, I don't know. We're really
top
dropping
tier,
the ball.
First class all the way. Why do you hate America?
Because America keeps doing crazy shit like bombing other countries. I wish it would stop. Hey, if we stop what we're doing in Libya and Syria, okay, I'll back off. All right, I'll say America is poggers.
Not too long ago, I seem to recall a certain bread tuber who invited some sort of CIA spook onto his live stream to rage about President Trump's possible withdrawal of troops from Syria. In fact, it was because of criticism voiced by people like said bread tuber that we still have a military presence in that region.
And draft it, we should draft the war to itself, but when it comes to Iran, we haven't even completely secured the regions we have invaded, right? So if we then destabilize them, which will also probably destabilize the Yemeni conflict because of the supplies they give to the Houthis. I know they at least give them oil. I can't confirm anything else.
I'm not familiar with this conflict. Could I get an ELI 5? So do you believe then that the that Rojava, possibly with the assistance of Assad, will be able to hold off Turkish aggression long enough for America to get its shit together and maybe send allies back? It's extraordinary to me. It really is, because I used to think, like a little while ago, maybe like early left, like when I was early leftist, but like before Trump really like hit his stride, I used to think like, yes, all governments are run by humans, sure, but the American empire has always been expertly capable of leveraging its power to ensure the maximum possible benefit from this isn't just like evil, which it is. It's also incompetent. Like nobody benefits from this. We don't even benefit from Turkish strength in the region. Like there's nothing.
There's no benefit. Nobody gets benefit from this except for the Turks. No one knows. It's literally just Trump either being a coward or just trying to help us pull numbers by pulling out.
I'm a libertarian socialist. I don't care. I don't give a fuck.
All right, well, what does that mean?
It means that I care about freedom, democracy, basically every like social value enshrined in the principles of the Enlightenment. I just think that worker-controlled means of production, the abolition of the commodity form, is the best way to get those things. I'm fulfilling the promises of the Enlightenment. I am the ultimate liberal by being a socialist.
I'm sorry, but I don't believe Vaush is a real socialist. Actual socialists don't believe that capitalism is a superior economic system to socialism just so long as worker co-ops are required. I mean, come on, Vaush. Bernie Sanders didn't run on a platform of encouraging more people to form worker co-ops. Now, I myself am not a socialist, but that being said, don't interpret this video as me defending the economy of the United States. This channel does not promote brain-dead Ben Shapiro takes. The US economy right now is nothing but communism for the rich. During all of the good times, all of the corporate profits are privatized, and then during the bad times, all of the losses are socialized. There is nothing fair or good about our current economic system. Of course, you would never hear this very legitimate criticism of our capitalist economy from someone like Vaush. That is because Vaush is nothing but a fake socialist who shills for the neoliberal plutocrats who actually control our country.
It's something that I would want studies done on, because I feel like it's an arbitrary line no matter what. Is it 2 people, 3 people, how much yearly income? I'm not sure. If for the sake of argument, we can say like 5 people. Any company larger than 5 people should probably be a worker co-op.
This idea is so dumb. If you put a rule into place that after a company has more than 5 employees, that company then has to turn itself into a worker co-op, you're going to end up with the following situation. Companies are just going to end up contracting out all of their labor so that they can remain private. Just look at something like YouTube. YouTube doesn't create its own content. Instead, it relies on people working as independent creators to upload content for YouTube. The vast majority of channels, such as mine, make zero money. Now, Vaush, if he makes any money from YouTube itself, it's probably only a very small amount. I imagine almost all of Vaush's income comes from donations from people who support his political beliefs. Another example of a company that conducts business this way is Uber. Some Uber drivers make decent money, but around half actually end up losing money while working for the company. Under Vaush's proposed government, our entire economy would end up being run like Uber or YouTube. What little benefits we receive as actual employees would be lost.
That's possible. I think there should probably be a long transitionary period. We couldn't like snap our fingers or anything. Ideally, it would be like over maybe 10 or 15 years, we would have increasing levels of like worker involvement in the corporation until we have like eventual cutting off point, like, okay, it's time, goodbye CEO, you know? But it would be like a transitionary process. And the last thing you said, I think, is the most telling. You said our own people. I don't know what the fuck you mean by our own people. I don't identify with the people of my country any more than I do with the people of the rest of the world.
Given the prevalence of this sort of attitude, does Vaush think the owner class is just going to stand idly by while the government lets workers take over these companies? Fuck no. They're just going to move their companies to other countries. This is one of the dumbest ideas that I have ever heard. If you wanted to immediately bankrupt a country, this is what you would do.
But you keep bringing up slavery, but there's a difference between a voluntary transaction. Like, you understand this, right? Like, this is
no, I don't. Like, that's why we call it wage slavery. Because in a wage slave system, which is what we have today, you don't really have a choice. You have to work. Some people get to escape that by making their own businesses. Most people, the vast majority, will spend their entire lives clamoring for scraps from people significantly wealthier than them. I don't like that very much. I don't think it's ethical.
The problem, Vaush, is that your proposal does not liberate people from wage cucking. The typical worker co-op that exists today is some sort of hippie grocery store. The manual labor involved in running a co-op is not any more glamorous than working for an actual grocery store.
Hey, Allison, can you take out the garbage? Thanks.
You may get paid slightly more because you share in the profits, but most people would not consider these to be good jobs. If your concern is wage cucking, consider the following. Number 1. Under our current system, you can start your own business, or alternatively, you could buy a pre-existing business. And number 2, you can hire employees to run your business so that Number 3, it is possible for people to have income without working. Under Vaush's system, though, this is impossible. That means number 4, normal capitalism offers a path for a few fortunate people to liberate themselves from wage cucking. Alternatively, Vaush's worker co-ops just mean that everyone must wage cuck.
There are plenty of worker co-ops in America, and the data across them is pretty convincing, at least with regards to worker happiness, resistance to price shocks. The idea that happiness is all coming from nepotism and religion is pretty ridiculous.
Well, if
there's a higher degree of security. The data indicates there's more resistance to price shocks. Worker co-ops are more likely to survive their first 3 year of business, which is the most tenuous point for like any startup business, and they're more likely to survive during a depression. Additionally, they're more likely to lower collective wages rather than fire people during like severe like economic downturns. In every way, shape, and form right now, it is better to work for co-ops than it is to work for traditional firms, at least with regards to financial.
Now, Vaush can cite all of these statistics, but how about the statistic that no worker co-op has ever succeeded to the point where it became a large or even medium-sized company? None of these hippie grocery stores have been able to spread across the United States to other cities like Chipotle or Starbucks has.
So most everyone has to work. So if you have to do something to survive, it's not
really voluntary. Just like if you have to suck cock to get coconuts that you need to live, you're not really voluntarily sucking the cock. You're just being subjected to a coercive force. Much in the same way, if somebody held a gun to my head and they were like, "Hey, jerk off in front of me right now, or I'll pull the trigger," I could technically choose to just take the bullet to my brain, but I would still argue that if I did masturbate, it wasn't really a voluntary choice. So that's how I feel about privately owned firms right now.
So let's assume for a second that Vaush has achieved his utopia. You graduate from college and you look to join your first worker co-op. The only co-op that's hiring, though, is McDonald's. Because you need wages to survive, you apply and get hired to work at the McDonald's co-op. As a condition of your employment, the McDonald's co-op requires you to work 35 hours a week frying French fries. In exchange for that, you get a low wage, which represents the thin margins generated by that McDonald's. How is this any different from involuntary wage cucking? Vaush, an actual justice warrior, spend an insane amount of time debating whether workers are coerced under capitalism. I can see why Vaush would want to make this argument if he was debating for a UBI or a welfare state. But that's not what he's advocating. He's advocating for worker co-ops, which would still require people to work to get wages.
But why free the slaves at all?
Because it's immoral. You're holding people as private property.
Why is it immoral?
Because you're holding people as private property when people.
So that's it. What if they hadn't been there as private property, but instead they just been kept in a fence? Had been shot anytime they tried to leave the fence, but they're still technically free citizens.
That's the same thing. Like,
oh, okay, wait. So wait, I'm sorry. Really quickly. So there's no functional difference between being private property of another and being put in a position where you can't escape a system where you have to force like yourself to provide labor for another.
Literally escaping versus, again, you voluntarily taking a job at a place. That's not
okay. So wait, it's the proximity that matters. What if there's no fence, but you have to come back or you die?
Now it's time to call out actual justice warrior. Don't be a libertarian. Be a conservative. Number one. Slavery is wrong because one human being should never be allowed to dominate over another human being. Number two. Why should the master be entitled to the fruits of labor when he didn't even compensate his slave for them? Number three. Given the power balance that exists between slave and master, slavery tends to result in slaves being harmed. This was perhaps most pronounced when slaves were forcibly separated from their families. Number four. Slavery disrespects the sanctity of the United States' founding principle that people are entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Number five. The institution of slavery disrespects the authority of the Christian morality our country was founded on, as well as the intellectual authority of Western Enlightenment philosophy. Don't be stupid, actual justice warrior. Don't let Vaush trick you into thinking you need to establish slavery as immoral through the prism of property rights.
Okay. Yeah, so my argument would be everything that you just said is factually wrong. The data seems to suggest that puberty blockers are widely appreciated by young trans people, that medical experts seem to be very good at determining which people actually are subject to gender dysphoria and which people aren't, and that the vast, vast, vast majority of people who transition do not end up regretting their choice. And that's the reason why the plurality of scientific organizations recommend the use of puberty blockers for young people.
All right, well, do you have any data to back that up if we go full nerd?
I do. Here you go.
Remember how I did that video about science and how it cannot be used to solve most political problems? Yeah, about that. The idea that giving puberty blockers or even performing actual surgeries on children who say they want a gender transition cannot be justified by a study that finds majority of those children approved of their transition as adults. The idea that it could is absolutely ridiculous. We do not survey children who have had sex with adults to see if they enjoyed the sexual experience. No one would propose allowing young children to drink alcohol on the basis that as adults, they also tend to drink alcohol. The point is that children are not mature enough to participate in these activities. Sure, it is possible for a young kid to consume alcohol responsibly or have a consensual relationship with an adult, but we don't allow it because of the potential harm. When it comes to children, having bright line rules on things like age of consent is incredibly important.
Like, first of all, I'm not in favor of giving kids as young as 11 puberty blockers. I think if they want to transition, there's a later age that would be more successful.
Well, why not?
Because they're altering their hormonal system, and if they decide to go in the other direction, it creates a lot of problems.
Wait, how?
You're going to gender transition 11-year-olds? What the fuck is wrong with you? I guess at this point, I just shouldn't even be surprised. After all, this is the guy who said consuming child porn was supported by virtue ethics. Assuming you are an 11-year-old boy, you've never had an orgasm, you've never been sexually aroused, and Vaush believes that you're in a position to make an informed decision on whether to cut your dick off. I don't care what studies there are on this. This is obviously child abuse, Vaush. I mean, come on.
Because what puberty blockers do, at least for males, is that they atrophy the testicles of males to prevent them from initiating puberty.
Been some very slight evidence that it might lead to a very slight decrease sometimes in penile size, but I think even that is inconclusive.
Vaush is completely full of shit on this. He has no idea what he's talking about. Just go to any bodybuilding forum on the internet and read about people who take steroids. You will learn that when men inject themselves with testosterone, their body will also raise estrogen levels to match the increased testosterone. That is why most bodybuilders who use steroids also take other drugs that block estrogen. Failing to do so will inevitably cause decreased testicle size and reduced sexual performance. Even the bodybuilders who take the estrogen blockers still experience this to a lesser degree. This is of course why steroids are illegal. Would Vaush support allowing an 11-year-old boy to make the decision to start taking steroids? I mean, that's why Arnold Schwarzenegger was so huge back in the day. He took steroids and human growth hormones while going through puberty. He would never have been able to get nearly that big if he had waited until he was 18 years old to start using steroids.
What's that based on?
Sure. Hold on. I think I have this in another document that I have. I think it was something like 75% said they agree, which is a pretty overwhelming amount considering these are people who haven't actually gone through a procedure that they're not familiar with the specifics of.
So the implication then, Vaush, is that 25% of children who gender transition regret taking puberty blockers. That is completely obscene, Vaush. The fact that a quarter of children regret doing this shows that this is a decision that needs to be made when they're more mature. They need more life experiences and probably some sexual experience before making these types of decisions. Overall, I have to say, Actual Justice Warrior did a poor job during this portion of the debate. He should have never tried to solve what was clearly a moral issue by applying science to it. Conservatives should never forget that they're on the side that's backed by morality. By cucking to the standards of leftists who have no morals, we're reducing our own ability to effectively argue politics. Well, that about wraps up all of my thoughts on the debate between Actual Justice Warrior and Vaush. Always keep in mind that small YouTube channels, especially those dealing with news and politics, are completely screwed over by YouTube's bullshit algorithm. So support small YouTubers. If you enjoyed this video and you're not already subscribed to my channel, please subscribe.